What's up, people? Welcome back to the second part of the podcast where we discuss about does stats make or break a coaster for you. So enjoy. So fasten your seatbelts and let's get ready for the next ride. Here we go. So this week we have a bit a different topic to talk about. Actually, I don't see many enthusiasts talking about it, but we are gonna address the question whether stats actually make or break the coaster. I think for me, right? For me, I don't think stats really matter that much. Like I'm not a big stats guy personally, but I don't know what about you guys.
I think so. It's hard to say right off the surface because there's something cool in being able to say like, "Oh yeah, I've been on King Ka, the world's tallest roller coaster. I've been on Formula Rossa, the world's fastest coaster." Like, there's a cool sense to knowing that you literally experience the most of something in the world. So in that aspect, it's kind of fun. But at the same time, by no means do you have to have like the most incredible, crazy stats to have a good ride and solid attraction kind of idea. So I don't know. What are your kind of shallow thoughts on that, Mitch?
I think you have a good point there where it's like I think it is cool to say that I've been on the fastest tallest. I think that's kind of part of the marketing aspect of it, and I do like that. But I think at the same time, if you get a bit too into it, I think there's kind of a growing pushback of people being like, I wish as an enthusiast I just stop thinking about the stats of this coaster, and I keep like because a lot of times what happens when you're riding a coaster and you going into an airtime hill, you're like, oh, that wasn't as good as this airtime hill. And then you
Hmm.
go into this drop, you're like, oh, that drop wasn't as good as Leviathan's drop or whatever. And it's just like I think at some point it's nice to kind of step back and be like, I do wish, and as an enthusiast, this has come with knowledge and more paying attention on a coaster, that you do just ride it more. I think naturally as you ride more coasters and just get more focused on it, you do start to compare it more. That before I got into coffee, all coffee tasted the same to me. Like I'm like I don't care. Like you, except for Tim Hortons. I always hated Tim Hortons, but like besides Tim Hortons, I always like Starbucks, Second Cup, Dunkin' Donuts, all of those ones. They just kind of like all the coffee started to, and then even local coffee shops. I'm like, it all tastes the same. But then I started to like learn about coffee and get into it and started grinding my own. And now all I do is compare it. And I'm like, oh, this coffee's like blah blah blah, and it's like it's pretentious, but it's almost like it naturally comes with more knowledge about the subject. So that can be applied with coasters as well. And even pre 2019, before I got into coasters, I didn't care. I like all coasters. It was like woo, loop de loop, drop, upside down, wee. Like I didn't care about any of that stuff. I did like theming. I always appreciated theming, but I didn't care about how steep or drop was or how much airtime. Where I think just naturally with knowledge, with more comparing things. And I think there is something to be said about not comparing things as much, just really, taking the time to just enjoy the ride and just ride it, which I think is something I want to kind of get more good at, especially the first ride on a coaster. I think as I ride a coaster more, I can, I'm happy to analyze it a bit more, but really as I go first into a coaster, just clear my mind, go ride it, no expectations. And I think I did a good job with that with Mystic Timbers on my last trip. There's a lot of rides like Lightning Rod and Sky Rush. I had all these like thoughts and preconceived
Mm.
notions and stuff like that. But with Mystic, I was so happy because I went in. I didn't really remember the POV. I had watched it years ago. I didn't really know what to expect. I'd only been on 3 GCIs at that point. And so when I wrote it, I was just like blown away. I was like, that was so good. And everyone's like, oh, it's not very high. It's not very fast. It's not very this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I couldn't even tell you how high the coaster is now. Like, I honestly have no clue how high it is, but I just remember loving it. Like, I just remember loving what they did with it. So it's a very long
Mm.
rant to say that I think it is something. I think it is something to be, but I think it's also something that we as a community need to work on because pretentiousness doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't. Pretentiousness gets us hated by parks, and there are a lot of enthusiasts that have made parks absolutely hate the community because they're absolutely the worst people. I think we all need to work on that.
Mm, very true. Very true. Sometimes you just see some enthusiasts and they're so entitled. It's almost like they expected some sort of privilege for like the enthusiast community. And that's not true because you have to remember amusement parks or theme parks are serving the majority of general publics, catered for foodies. So I just think it's just kind of stupid, like how enthusiasts can be so kind of GP sometimes.
And
Like just win about everything, and like Mitch just said, I think
yeah, they totally
I think it's more. It's almost like we need to learn how to appreciate right and like get the feeling back to the general public dates where you don't really know about coasters, so that your expectation isn't too high, and hence the experience is like better. Like in this case, Mystic Timber.
Yeah, I think like if a park were to cater to enthusiasts the way they want them to, parks wouldn't exist. It's as simple as that. Like
Yeah,
it's a business, they gotta run the way they're running. And that's what I've always liked about my approach. Like I'm not saying this to, stand on my soapbox and preach out to everybody in the little market square here. But the idea is like I really don't get to be getting out to these places. I'm hoping in the future I can start making some trips once I'm, on my latter end of university and done that part of my life. But so like anytime I go somewhere, even if it's just the city exhibition, like our fair, like I just appreciate it for what it is, and I don't take anything for granted. Like everything's an experience. And that's kind of why it was jokingly said, oh, that's why Six Flags is like Disneyland to me, because it's just something that you don't get to experience a ton. And I think people just gotta take a step back and be like, yo, this place is pretty cool. Even though I have access to it every day, like start going and try and find little things at the park that you might never have noticed before, other than just, your coasters, your stats. How many times can you get on a certain ride in a day? Maybe like have just, do some funky little things to keep the park fresh, I think is a good way to go about this whole industry.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so true. Like you just have to appreciate rides. And can you imagine a park like built like with like all enthusiasts dream, just catering the need of enthusiasts, and then it would just all be RMCs, like because new gen people like they just only care about RMC. They are so focused on RMC that no other coasters are worthy. So I mean, I'm almost grateful that most people aren't enthusiasts. That means that parks could get more diversity stuff, although it might seem like the same thing over and over and over again. BMM dive coasters, they are big crowd pleaser, but not many enthusiasts appreciate enough about them, I feel like. And we could see how it might not be the best case in terms of like a marketing standpoint when it comes to, is it Kings Island that built like Orion, right?
yeah, Kings Island.
Yeah, Kings Island. And well, it's pretty much when you think about the whole sort of Giga thing. Like Giga, we are not getting into the Giga hyper debate here, but when you think about that coaster, it is pretty much like for like fan survey signing, like for catered for enthusiasts rather than the majority of the population. Like the majority of the population wouldn't really give a damn about whether what sort of coaster it is. They would only care about it's a coaster at the end of the day. So I mean, it's not like they have to do it, but they did. But I just think that it's just kind of that's the point when it's like driving too much, like the community is driving too much decisions, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Orion was an interesting one too because so many enthusiasts are obsessed with the definitions, like you said, like they're very much like defining it, like hyper, giga, strata. Very, they're in their minds. It's very strict. It's very black and white. It's very exactly how it is. But truly, the terms were just invented by Cedar Fair and Intamin. So no other chain but Cedar Fair can technically use the word giga. Like they've literally trademarked it. Like they can't even say it. B&M themselves doesn't even use giga. Like they don't even use that term. They consider. So when I say, oh, my favorite my favorite hyper coaster is Behemoth, and then it's Leviathan, for example, and everyone's like, Leviathan's not a hyper coaster. I'm like, but it's the model. The model of coaster is hyper coaster, and so they're going off in these things like these definitions are not absolute. They are like enthusiasts use them as a whole. Like they define things like Red Force or Steel Dragon 2000. Those parks don't call them Giga. Well, to my knowledge, anyways, they don't call them Giga. They call them Europe's tallest and fastest roller coaster. and they call Steel Dragon 2000 still the world's longest coaster. But to my knowledge, they don't say Giga because, as far as I understand it, Giga was invented by Cedar Fair at Intamin when they built Millennium Force. So those strict definitions, enthusiasts kind of live in their own little world about that. they do, and so they're talking about Orion. Oh, it's not a Giga, it's blah blah. I'm like, it's a hyper coaster, just like Diamondback. Like it is. Kings Island did say it was a Giga in their marketing because of the height and everything like that, which is fine. But B&M would never call it a Giga themselves. I don't think they're even allowed to. I don't think they even can because that's an intimate thing. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing when they say it's like people in general, especially younger enthusiasts and older enthusiasts who have the mind of a child, which there's a lot of those. Like they very much like black and white, like things the absolute. They deal in absolutes. This is the way it is, or this is the way it is. And as we've done this podcast, as we've talked to more and more people, the more I've grown up too. Like you just realize that the world in general, coasters or not, doesn't work in absolutes. It's just not how life works. It just isn't. And people, I mean, this is getting very deep, but like people definitely think of the coasters as like an escapism. So they're getting away from maybe something that they don't like in their lives. So they like the security and they like the absolutes of coasters. They like the stats. They like this. They like things being categorized and them being easily to process. So it's hard to balance that escapism, which is great. But when they talk about, oh, I don't want a B&M dive coaster out, I don't want this, I don't want that, it's not a Giga because of this. They're trying to keep on to that escapism when really roller coasters and roller coaster community doesn't live separate from the real world. It just doesn't. Like that's just a reality of life. So it's a very long and deep thing about how absolutes, they don't really benefit anyone, but so many coaster enthusiasts really do want to focus on categorizing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, working in absolutes, that definitely doesn't work in real life. Like, can you imagine if you go into a grocery store and ask for ask for a banana, and then it's like 1.65 kilograms, whatever, and then you just pay, because we have to round it up to the whole number, so we are gonna calculate that as 1.7 kilograms, and you're gonna pay for more eventually. So I don't get how like some enthusiasts think that it has to be absolute, and I think they almost lost the fun when they were like GP.
Mhm.
I just think. What about you, Logan? What do you think?
Like in terms of like people being so stuck up on the numbers, or what do you kind of mean?
I mean, it's more about how people were stuck up in the numbers and what enthusiasts are like generally nowadays about stats.
Yeah, I mean Mitch really hit on it. It's hard to get into the whole psychology behind, the escapism that's in the whole coaster and amusement industry without, like I'm not a professional in any of that. So a lot of it is just, stuff that you can like hint on and whatnot, but it's hard to really dwell into it without actually, knowing the whole story. But there's just so many factors that go into a lot of the people who you would fit under the umbrella term, like your coaster boys, your coaster girls, any of that kind of stuff, because to a lot of people these parks really are just like an escape. Like I don't want to quite say a world of imagination, but you kind of get what I'm going at when I say that. Like it's just something where it's there, it's stability, it's like under control, it's like you go in there, you know what you're gonna get. It's like a safe haven, I guess. And that's why it seems like so many of these things where, if you're not experiencing these certain things in life, it, seems like it's pretty petty. But in those kind of people's minds, it's like, no, it's like a serious, personal, legit issue, which, in the whole grand scheme of actual life, it really isn't. But at that stage, it's where so many people are in this community. It's, it's a sensitive topic with certain things. So it's like pros and cons there, because like I'm glad that parks and people are finding something to like give them comfort. Like oddly enough, I know NASCAR's that for a lot of people, which I'm not going to get into that rant. This is your British Hong Kong podcast, HC, so I'm not going to derail it with Southern NASCAR talk. But it's just that idea of people having this safe haven in place. It's just I just get wary when it seems like it gets a little bit dangerous with how reliant people are on stuff. So, there's definitely pros and cons to that kind of idea.
Yeah, I mean, stats are there. Then definitely agree with. I mean, stats actually made me more like interested in sort of the engineering side of things, and maybe about how like maybe how rides run and how the operations work and block breaks and things like that. I think like you said, is pros and cons. It's a bit like two sided, really. That it's a good thing, but at the same time, I guess it's a bad thing for the general vibe because I just don't think it would be too fun with like a stats nerd that just goes to theme park and starts rambling about Fury 325 or like I don't know, like just get. Can you imagine if like every ride have like the stats in his name, like in his name, like Fury 325? I actually don't find that one that bad, but I just think it's not cool.
I will say there's this one thing that I find very interesting with stats, and it's the whole I've seen it on Instagram, the whole like personification of coasters and like cartoons and whatnot. I absolutely love that stuff. I think it's just absolutely hilarious how people are able to interpret the stats into like different characteristics and whatnot. And I think that's just like a really cool and creative outlook, like something I would never guess in my wildest imaginations that people come up with. So I love seeing that kind of creativity.
Yeah.
But then you can also see that go to the max and then get to the dangerous territory when you got like the woman who married the 100,001 knots ride, or like, you know what I mean? People who actually think that they have a romantic relationship with, these inanimate objects that, so I
Yeah.
don't know, just different things there. So there's so many just cool and whatnot aspects, and stats is a very interesting thing because like in theory it's just a number, a way to just quantify what you experience, but in actuality it's just so much more than just that little number.
Definitely. I mean, does the ride experience not matter now? Like, if the ride experience does not matter, then why are you on the coaster anyways? Like, if you are so obsessed with stats, then why just not build like a 500 T Rex, like 500 feet T Rex at like every single park? Like, that's gonna be your stats, like stats king, I guess. But the world doesn't work like that. So sorry, stats guys. Gonna disappoint you there. But hey, you like stats? Great for you. But it's not something that I treasure to like death. It's not like a life rule for me as an enthusiast, and I'm certain that it wouldn't be. And I mean, do you like when it comes to like personal experience? I find like smaller rides with less like crazy stats, like Roosterbanen at Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. It's actually in my top 10, and that thing ain't really tall. It's like super short. It's like one of those scenic railways with like small dips and small airtime hills. But it's like the clicking noise and also like the cable lift that builds anticipation, and also how the whole ride packages that makes the ride for me. And it's also the forces that, in this case, a strong airtime forces that you get like practically thrown against the bar, like thrown against the bus bar, and it's those sort of feeling that I enjoy. Hence, I just think this is a really good example of how stats doesn't really matter. I guess Logan or Mitch would have similar experience with some of your favorite coasters. But what ride was really memorable to you, like Logan?
Well, like, I mean, some of my favorite rides are just ones that are just purely and stupidly fun, have like zero stat value to them at all. I constantly hit on it on our show, but I have like a very much, it started as like a guilty pleasure, but now I'm at the point where like I don't feel guilty for enjoying my Zaire family coasters, just chugging around through the park. Like, we need more straight track on coasters. That feeling of speed is just absolutely amazing and underrated, in my opinion. I haven't actually asked Mitch you too much on this. What are kind of your like guilty pleasures or like things that go under the radar stat wise that you like, coasters and rides you like?
I think if I would have to pick a stat that I think people underrate and I love and I really love is probably length. there are huge amount of time of people talking about how much, like, if a short coaster is really good, but it's too short in their opinion, they think it's a bad ride. And I just don't understand that. I don't understand that, like, oh, it could be longer, it could be this, it could be this. And I'm like, well, it's not. So how is it? How is it in its current form? And one of the big ones that I really love that seems to be fairly mixed. Well, I think the number one for me, I know for sure, but the one I'm going to talk about first is Wonder Woman Golden Lasso coaster, the Raptor clones. There are some people like me who absolutely love them. I love them for what it is, and there are people being like, it's too short. It's too short. And I'm like, okay, well, how did you actually enjoy the ride? And they're like, well, it could have been longer. And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, how did you enjoy the physical ride? And it's that thing where it's like, it could be this, it could be that. It always could be something else. It does, like, it has not very high stats at all, but for what it is, if you just take it as it is, it's such an amazing ride. And like, maybe, yes, if it had a 4-hour wait, I probably wouldn't wait for it. But the reality is, most of the time, it has a pretty short wait. It has like anywhere between a half an hour to an hour wait, and I'm totally fine to do that. So I think Wonder Woman is the one that in my top 10 that I get, but the one that I hear the most from people, that's my number 11 favorite coaster, which is Full Throttle. People hate that ride nonstop. They're like, it's so short, it's half a coaster, blah blah, it's half this, it's blah blah. And I'm like, I don't want a coaster. I find some coasters are just too long. Like, there's some coasters that are just too long and all this stuff. And I'm like, why can't you just appreciate for what it is? Like, it's a great launch, amazing hang time, backwards launch, top. It's just, it for what it is, it's great. I've waited an hour for Full Throttle, and I was not mad about it at all. So I think those two are the ones that I really kind of stand out in my mind is like length. People just always are like, even Lightning Rod, my number one coaster, people are always like, it's too short. It's too short. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand, because for me, Steel Vengeance, way too long. It could end the course and I could be happy. When you add length, it has 5,000 feet or whatever of track. When you add length by just adding bunny hills, like little bunny hill over and over again 20 times, that's not the kind of length I want. That is boring to me. That is repetitive. I'd much rather have half a coaster and have all unique elements. So I think length for me, those two rides, I'm just looking at my favorite coasters. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but those two really there. I think also something that also people, especially enthusiasts, love to do is if it's not an airtime focused coaster, they tend to hate on it. They're like, it's not airtime focused, I don't like it. And so that is another one where it's like, not every coaster needs to have airtime constantly. Like, I'm good to have a diversity of elements. Like, throw me an inversion, throw me some positive G's, throw me negative G's. But if there's not a ton of airtime, people somehow think that's a bad ride. And I don't know why. I don't see why it needs to have 25, 30, 40, 50 seconds of airtime for it to be a quote unquote good ride. So I don't know. Even like, I'm thinking about the Incredicoaster. Incredicoaster, what, has like 1 or 2 moments of airtime? It's in my top 20. Voyage isn't. Like that, and Voyage and Steel Vengeance have the 2 most amount of airtime in the world. So I don't understand that focus. I much prefer my just in general fun factor of a ride for that. So yeah, very, very, again, I'm sorry, very long ramble, but I think those are the 2 stats that really stand out to me as what people really harp on a coaster.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree on the Steel Vengeance point. I just think from the POV, the pacing and all, and like the pacing of the coaster is amazing, I have to say. But to me, like you're just doing repetitive elements after repetitive elements after repetitive elements after repetitive elements, and yet I see coaster enthusiasts just rave about that thing, and I just don't understand why. I mean, it's a good ride, maybe, but length is definitely something that doesn't matter as much as people think. Like, why could you not appreciate something that is short but packs a punch? Like, maybe like I don't know, a Eurofighter or something like that, a small scale Eurofighter. It could pack a big punch. it doesn't need to be like the longest Eurofighter. It doesn't make it better if it does like things well. And it's funny because sometimes people really like the Beast at Kings Island, and sometimes they really hate it because of how long it is. So I just don't see Lane for being the premier factor, I suppose. Premier factor.
I agree with that. I mean, the Beast is a totally different, its own world too, because the daytime rides are just okay, but the nighttime rides are amazing on it. I do have to say, but I think length is definitely one of those ones where it's just like, oh, it's done. And even so, it's funny when you think of something like Leviathan or Orion, very long coasters, 5,000 feet of track, but they only have 5 or 6 elements, and that's it. They only have and that's like Leviathan has what, a turnaround, like they have a drop, 90-degree turn, speed hill, hammerhead turn, hill, end, and that's it. And it's 5,000 feet. So it's just funny that it's like the length doesn't really say how many elements there is. Like I'd prefer to have a lot more elements than have like a really long coaster and that sort of thing. That's why I'd much prefer something like a Fury 325, which with its length, it uses a lot more, does a lot more things. There's a lot more unique elements, a lot more low to the ground stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I honestly am kind of getting over watching like YouTube ranking videos. Like it's just very annoying and it's all very much the same. And it's all people being like either the very pro Steel Vengeance, the very anti Steel Vengeance. It's number 36 for me. It's somewhere in the middle. But I've just kind of gotten a little bit over hearing about how everyone loves the same kind of coaster over and over again. Yeah, so I don't know. It's a weird thing. People love to quantify the unquantifiable, if that makes sense.
Exactly. You hit the nail right on the head there. And especially like Logan just said, like before, like you don't have to enjoy like every sort of intense ride. You could like, I don't know, like a smooth B&M or a smooth B&M Hyper or something like that. Or even if you like going on kiddie coasters like Autosled, then great for you. Like that's what you enjoy, and I think ultimately is what you enjoy that is the most important. So we can just throw the stats out of the window, like for that moment, and it's just really important, I guess. Like when it comes to that, because like when you think about it, I think other factors come into play more important than that, like maybe interaction with the terrain and the decoration rating, even in games like Roller Coaster Typhoon games or like something, the decoration rating still matters to the guests. So I mean, one of my top tens is Nemesis, the classic old B&M invert. One of the first ones, I think. I just love how it hugs at the terrain and it's so insane and pacing. But if you compare it to like, I don't know, that's a bit extreme. The Top Thrill Dragster, it doesn't have the stat at all. It's just rubbish in comparison. But you could still enjoy it. Like, so I just think ultimately enjoyment is the key to this. And I always have my guilty pleasure, like of getting on. I think I once did like a Big Apple coaster, like 4 laps on a Big Apple coaster, and then my friend was just filming me off ride, and it was the funniest memory I've ever had. So that's that's like one of the credit horror moments that I really enjoyed. So
Yeah, how quick the operations are too.
Yeah, my thoughts pretty much come down to look, stats are important for marketing, but the only stat that semi matters is how long the queue is. And that is it for me.
Yeah, operations is definitely us Japan parks. They can't do it at all. Like somehow they manage to do customer surveys, like top-notch customer surveys, but somehow they can't manage operations. Like they are so freaking friendly. Like I couldn't emphasize how nice the experience is, even though that I have to wait in line, and I just very often if it is in another country, you would see people raging about it and going full Karen mode. I would like to speak to the manager, or like I don't know, like but it's so weird because they actually try to hype you up, and even though the operations are not up to par at all, it still makes my day good, even though I had one of the worst experience in queue. So I guess there's more things important than stats. So people get over it. Don't be too obsessed about stats. Is what I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. Universal Studios Japan, I've actually heard, is like famous for bad operations because Tokyo Disney was okay, nothing compared to the American parks, but it was just, I would say, just okay for operations. But I've heard, yeah, Universal Studios, not. I mean, Universal in general doesn't have like as good of operations, but operations are probably my number one stat because it's like how fast they can get people on rides. That is huge. I mean, like how fast they can get people through. That's like making or breaking a day. Which also kind of goes into what we were talking about, like how much we like a coaster. Mood, like how much I enjoy a coaster is how good my day is going so far. Like my mood going onto it, the staff there. That's a huge factor because you talk about Top Thrill Dragster in 2019. I didn't love it as much. 2020, it's now in my top 10. So everything, mood, staff operations, just kind of the whole general feel of the day can really affect how much you like a coaster or how much you enjoy a specific ride.
Exactly. I like using the example of, is it Big Thunder Mountain Railroad? Because there's different versions in the California Disney version. So
yeah,
I just like how they actually put in some weird elements in there, like just to make the ride sort of more wild and sort of wacky to feed the theme, and that's what makes it to me. Even though that coaster doesn't look that great in stats wise, and it's just like a mine train. They love the mine train, Disney. So
yeah, exactly. And the great thing about Thunder Mountain too is each Thunder Mountain, I've been on all of them. Yeah, the great thing about Thunder Mountain is each of them have something different to offer. So Disneyland's was completely rebuilt, but what was great about it when they rebuilt it was they had added all these new theming effects, and it looks so good. And like it's less crazy, but the theming of it, like with the explosions and the new screen projections, are just awesome. The Disney World version, while it's a little bit wilder, the theming is they haven't really updated a lot of the theming since when it first opened, so it's much more basic and that kind of thing. And the Disneyland Paris one, it goes into an island, and so it's totally unique from all the other ones. So each of them offers something different, and the Tokyo Disney one's okay. The operations are just bad on it though, but they do offer something different. And you're right, it is just a mine train, but the wacky theming, I love like the music and the announcements. I like the when any Disney fan when they hear is like you're ready for the wildest ride in the wilderness, like that is such a quintessential Disney experience. Is like hearing that announcement,
yeah,
and then hearing the sounds. Like they add when you're going around corners, they add the sounds of like a screeching mine cart going around the corner, so you feel like the car's like go like riding the rails like Indiana Jones style, but it's not, and they just add so much to it. And people hate the coaster enthusiast community hate on Big Thunder Mountain. They're like, it's boring, blah blah, and I'm like, it's not meant to be like the crazy. It's just meant as like a wacky, fun, high capacity, well themed family ride that like kids that are really short can ride.
yeah.
Especially in the front where it's not that wild that they're scared. But if you ride in the back, especially on the Disneyland Paris one, it's crazy. It's like the airtime on the Disneyland Paris one is absolutely wild. It's so much fun.
It's so whack when you look at the layout, just like how it goes into the center of the island, and then it just do weird things. Like I think that one is like top notch, like the best of the best in like all of Thundermon.
It's the best one for sure. 100%. And I have a personal connection to it because it was built in 1992. 1992 was not a big year for coasters. So all the coasters built in 1992, that's my birth year. So I got on that coaster and I was like,
Aww.
Same age as me. I love it.
Personal connections, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to bring up how bad Dragon is. Like my home park Arrow Looper is really bad because it has this really bulky restraint that you couldn't see elsewhere. And but still, I like that coaster. That it's because that it has like the personal connection to me, even though the stats are really bad. and
Yeah.
and it's really a head-banging machine. And if you thought Vekoma SLC is a bit, then you should go and ride. Oh, sorry, you couldn't ride it anymore. But it's just something, because I remember it was the first ride that actually went upside down, and I was actually crying because I was so scared. But without this coaster, I wouldn't be like a Fuji nowadays. So I have to thank what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have like I don't know, like how about you, Logan? Do you have like a particular good experience, like other than I don't know, like really good experience, something that really sort of gives you nostalgia in a way?
I mean, that's Mindbender for me. Big reason it's number one. It's just the biggest coaster we got out here. It's world class and it's just ours, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, the little anytime they send a train, get one moving, absolutely love it. Or even just like their spiels, like "Welcome aboard Mindbender, the world's largest indoor triple looping coaster." Like just all these specific stats that I just love it so much. So I love that ride. Just I don't even know what it is. It's just so iconic and engraved into my memory. The dropping from the roof into that first big drop, or losing your sight in the second loop all the way up to the block section. The first time I got on it, I had to shove napkins in my shoes because I was just like a quarter of an inch too small, like half a centimeter. The first time I went on it backwards, I was just geeking out because it was a completely different experience since to anything I've been on before. So that's the coaster that just holds by far, in a way, the most sentimental value to me. Sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. You just look at, like, I'm surprised that it didn't put you off at all, because look at how huge that thing is. Like in like the mall, it's so intimidating, and I'm surprised that you came out loving roller coasters.
Oh man, you can hear it in the food court. Well, not the food court, Gourmet World. You can hear it
Gourmet
in.
World.
And yeah, like I don't know. It's such a big, just intimidating looking hunk of steel, essentially. And that's honestly one of the reasons I wanted to get on it even more. It's just I wanted to, like, experience it, tame it, and just love it. And I don't know. I love just getting over fears and like getting that adrenaline rush. Like even outside of coasters, I love jumping, doing flips off of diving boards in high places. And I don't know, I'm just very much a thrill seeker, adrenaline junkie type deal. So anything that can fill that rush, honestly, that's why I like coasters so much, because it's the safest way to fill that rush. So wish we had more out here.
Strange that you do not Intamin sack spins though, like the one coming to the Rond.
I hate that POS so much. It's
Yeah.
I'm just hoping Quebec can fix it. That's all I'm gonna say. I have, like, I don't even know, no more than 20% confidence they're gonna be able to make it a good ride.
Oh well.
But
Oh
there's
dear.
still that slimmer of hope, and we'll see what happens in 2022 because they pushed it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been on one so far, and it's pretty crap. It's insane, like at Greenland.
Yeah.
I think the other Intamin I just don't like how you're thrown back and forth, and your head just kind of like just like literally like get pushed onto like your back, and I didn't really find that enjoyable. But I think the other Intamin attraction, like the Icaros, like one of the Intamin sky jump towers, like similar to Falcon's Fury, so good. It's so scary. Like it freaked me out. I did it once and I was like, nope, I'm done with this thing. Like it's just so bizarre, and it still scares me. Like to when I think back about it, and but I really regretted not getting a second ride on it. But if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to do anything else. So
yeah.
And also back on that park, actually, Logan would really like it because they have a good source growth there. Jet line, which really who's some intense positive G's on like some of the helixes, and I guess it's probably not comparable to Mindbender at all because it doesn't have inversions and things like that. Like doesn't have loops. So, but but still, I think you would find
Yeah.
that really enjoyable if you ever make it out to Sweden.
Well, I definitely think so. Okay, so funny that you mentioned Grunelund, because I was texting Mitch multiple times this week about how badly I want to get to that place. They are very, very good at having awesome concerts in the summer. And there were
Yeah,
a good handful of artists that I like guiltily pleasure really like, and I watched their like whole set from like years ago a couple nights this past week, and just it looks absolutely insane and wacky how it's like kind of a boardwalk park, so many rides stacked on top of rides. There's so many good rides. The thrill rides look really awesome. Like honestly, I think that might be my new bucket list number one in the world. It looks amazing. I love that place. Like just the idea of it so much. So I don't know. And just Sweden, for some reason, Sweden I really want to try and go to someday because it just looks so interesting.
it is so good. Even the food is like,
Yeah.
but sorry, Mitch here, because I'm describing meat food to like every meat food
You
because
are all
I
good.
really just yeah, I just really enjoy meatballs and things like that. Swedish meatballs, and I think I had elk there. Like,
Oh,
um,
elk is so good.
yeah, it's so good. It's freaking amazing, and also like just how friendly the people are and how crazy the park is. My even my even my mom was kind of blown away when she first saw it. Like she was like, "This is Boardwalk Park. Like what the hell? It looks like it looks like they didn't calculate like the clearance and stuff, and they just
Yeah.
built a park. It's madness."
And like speaking on the food, they even I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I have to because it looks so good. McDonald's out there has like these fries. I forget what they're called, but it's like the pump cheese, and it's got some green onions, and it's got like a bunch of it might be bacon bits or maybe it's just green onions, but it just looks really good. So like even just like area specific, geographic specific things that like even just fast food chains are different, and it looks awesome. So it's like that whole travel aspect just looks amazing to that place. So I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, they have a really weird like burger chain. I don't know if you could call it a McDonald's knockoff, but they have this. I think it's called like Max or something like that. But basically, they from videos that I see, like from photos I see, they seem to do really good burgers. So interesting stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. I think we should maybe wrap up this episode here. And do you guys want to add final things like before we end this episode here? Because I know you guys would be interested to add in your socials and stuff.
Yeah, that's at Prairie Coasting. You can find that on Instagram, on Twitter, and YouTube. Quite frankly, Instagram's been pretty stagnant because I've been picking up busy with school. And honestly, I don't know. Like, I still like Instagram, but I've just, like, I don't have a drive to be posting anything there right now, which is totally fine because I am not out here trying to, like, grow our brand and do all these things. It's just a fun place to put a bunch of my West Edmonton Mall pictures. So our podcast is very just lighthearted, just fun, having some conversations, talking this stuff, and not taking anything seriously at all. So that's pretty much the gist of our podcast. And our socials, we're just chill people. Oh, HC's completely gone. I'm gonna keep going because it's still recording. So yes, that's our whole gist of our show. And then if you want to even just chat with me personally, you can always hit up my DMs at that guy from Saskatchewan. That's on Instagram and Twitter. That's more so just life stuff, more prairie life stuff like that. So I don't know, just our little humble plugs for our stuff, I guess you could say.
My Instagram is Coaster Travel. That is my personal one, but Logan manages the one for the podcast.
Should we like end the show for him? May as well. We're still going, and he's completely out now. I don't think she stops. I think we just keep on going straight into the iceberg.
Yeah, I know. He's gone. Yeah.
Oh, HC just texted me. He's like, crap, what happened there? Did you get disconnected? I'm telling him I'm gonna send him a video here. Yeah, don't worry, HC. For some reason it's still recording. We're ending the show for you here. So
All right. Maybe he'll rejoin and end the show, but if not, that was Hope you enjoyed our episode of Coaster-852. It was a lot of fun. If you haven't already, check out our episode with HC over on Prairie Coasting. That's from December, right? December? How long ago, eh? Holy man. and the show, well, it's recording, so.
Yeah, we did our own little wrap up for you. I don't know if it was very good, but just for the heck of, like, you can obviously throw in your own end. It's your show, but we just had some fun with it.
So yeah, that's what happened. And as you could hear, it's very interesting. And so basically what happened was I got disconnected and somehow the recording software ain't letting me get back on again. So credits to them for ending the show for me. And anyways, hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I certainly really did enjoy talking to them, and make sure you check their podcast out at Prairie Coasting. And we'll see you next time. Bye.